Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. How healthy is the storage in your warehouse? Have you ever walked the aisles looking for rack damage, empty pallets, or hanging pallet wrap? I know I've spent too much time doing that in my ops career. Now, there's a better answer from Dextery. Storage Health is their AI-powered check that runs with every robot scan that can detect damage, safety hazards, and hygiene issues across your warehouse at every height. Think damaged racking, pallet defects, tipped items, hanging shrink wrap, or damaged goods. Easily detected and alerted by Dextery's AI-powered platform while their robot scans your aisles. Stop missing these critical ops items and put Dextery's Storage Health to work for you at Dextery.com. That's DEXORY.com. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. Today's episode, we are at Modex. It's day 2 as we are recording this on site here in Atlanta. And I'm going to be joined by Will Blount. He's the Director of Sales for Automation at Wize Solutions. So, Will, thanks for joining me. How's everything going so far? We're like halfway through almost Modex here.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's been great. I think the show has been really energetic today here on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Almost standing room only, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of traction out there. I think a lot of great new products. You know, our teams out there kind of cruising the floor, seeing partners, what's important and interesting to them, and then trying to stay up to date on the latest and greatest technologies.
Absolutely. This is a place to do it for sure. Yeah. There's certainly a vast number of things to look at, definitely. But tell us a little bit about Wize Solutions. What are you guys all about?
Yeah, so we've been in the industry about 19 years, really cut our teeth doing what I would call non-automation items in the warehouse that you're always going to need, but don't necessarily move, right? So your static shelving, your single selective rack, mezzanines, really all the ancillary equipment to a warehouse automation system. We were approached by one of our strong partners in 2021 to really help build out their automation side of the business from a mechanical install support side. And that's really where we've kind of cut our teeth in what I would describe as precision installation. The specific partner's ASRS system requires 1 mil precision over a 30-foot upright. So you can imagine if we're having to install something and plumb something to that tolerance, a lot of these other technologies that don't require that make it easy for us to also put those in as well. So I think really starting with your conventional items that everybody needs, and now we're providing a turnkey mechanical installation where we can do your precision and your non-precision.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you, so tell us a little bit about that transition or the addition of this automation side now. So it sounds like there was somebody that came to you and was asking you to do more of this kind of precision type work. So tell us a little bit about how have you seen the market change a little bit, and how are you now trying to cater to that?
Sure. Well, I think really it all started before I even joined Wize. These guys come to a show like this, and it's hard to walk into something like this and say, we shouldn't be in automation, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The way that we've built our company has been really slow and steady, not getting too far out in front of our skis. So finding the right partner, I think, was the first half of it. But secondly, a partner that we could grow with. And we're seeing that as they develop new generations of their racking system. We're the first partner to help them install those types of things. But really the focus has been, we've got 525 guys that are doing a great job on the non-automation side. Can we take a group of them that are looking to be more qualified in the installation, looking for more responsibility, and grow that team out? And what we found is, of the 525, about 200 of them were really interested in automation. So it made a really smooth transition over, and you pair that with the precision experience that we got growing with our original partner. It's just created a recipe for success for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how do you fit into that automation, right? Because you talked about, you as you said, the non-automation stuff was your focus in the past, right? Which is the static shelving, the racking, et cetera, things like that. So now how do you fit into the fold with somebody, you mentioned ASRS. So how do you come into play, and what part do you play when it comes to an ASRS implementation, for example?
Sure. Yeah, I think it could be two different ways, either through the integrator or through the OEM. So we've got a lot of implementations where we've partnered with a racking manufacturer here in the United States, where they are providing the racking portion of the ASRS system. And so Wize has fit into, we'll call it the picture, by being the installer from the racking provider.
Okay.
In other scenarios, we're going directly to the integrator, right? The integrator may be sourcing an ASRS from somebody, conveyor from somebody else, platforms, crossovers, whatever it might be. And then Wize is providing a turnkey quote to them. So we're chasing integrators and we're chasing OEMs. Every once in a while, we have a direct end user that'll engage in maybe like a rack reprofile or tearing out a section of conveyor that they don't need anymore, but oftentimes partnering with integrators and OEMs.
All right. Good to hear there. And tell us a little bit about, what does that look like from now the OEM or the integrator standpoint? Like, it sounds like you come in, you put like the infrastructure together, right? And then they're bringing the technology layer on top of that. Is that kind of the right thinking?
Yeah, I would say the best way to maybe view us as an extension of your execution team.
Okay.
As you know from being in this industry, there are a number of integrators and OEMs that don't have an installation force, and there are a number of integrators and OEMs that have their own in-house. And I think whatever scenario it is, Wize can still be there to support, because we can pick up in areas where maybe they can take their direct installers and put them on troublesome jobs or high risk or maybe bleeding edge technologies, and Wize can supplement the rest of the installations that they're doing, maybe less bleeding edge. Or we can be your installation workforce because you don't have one. And it really starts all the way at receiving. So we have a proprietary receiving app that we interface with the bill of material we get from your team. We receive all that material and really serve as your team on site until electrical and controls need to happen. We can receive everything. We can really install everything from an automation perspective all the way to non-automation, just because of our history, whether that be an ASRS conveyor system or the ancillary equipment around it, and then really leave the site spick and span clean so that your team can come in, make the final field wiring adjustments, start your commissioning process, and turn it over to the customer. So as integrators often sell that they're an extension of an OEM, an end user's engineering force from a data analysis perspective, I pitch the same way from an installation perspective. We're just an extension of your execution team.
Interesting. So from the tech provider's perspective, right, you're putting in that infrastructure, and then now they're able to come in just like, I'm sure it's a little more complicated, but they're able to just like plug their tech in, right, and be able to get going and not worry about some of that installation like you talked about, or some of the infrastructure and things of that nature. So now how does that, I guess, maybe translate over to the end user who's going to be ultimately the one that's like using that system on a day-to-day basis? How does that help maybe make the project smoother or maybe speed it up? Like, what are the advantages for them?
Yeah, our involvement with the end user is always varying. Obviously, our customer is always the person that's providing the purchase order to us.
Right.
We extend the service past that. But I think in good confidence with our partners, we have to continue to communicate with them as the customer has feelings or changes on site. Ultimately, for us, we're just trying to go and provide the best, safest, and most efficient installation that we can. With all our guys being OSHA 10, I mean, our focus is to go in and provide a safe installation that doesn't impact the end user. Really, if we don't have involvement with the end user, it means we've probably done a pretty good job, right?
That's a good sign. Yeah. Yeah.
But oftentimes we get on site and, hey, while you're installing the ASRS, would you mind reprofiling our 6 bays over here?
Sure.
So we do get that, and always happy to help out and pick up that extra work when we're on site, but just have to get back to our customer and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. Really, it all relies on communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a little bit too here, as you mentioned, you're out here connecting with some of your partners, seeing what's the latest. So what are some of the automation things that you're seeing in the market, or that's kind of catching your attention as something that you feel like you can support?
Yeah, what's really kept us busy lately are, some people call them 4-way shuttles or the 2-dimensional shuttle.
Okay.
But your Movu, Atlas type solutions, Atoma, pallet runner type solutions, as well as the AMR-based goods to person. So your masted AMRs from High Robotics and Geek and those Adverb and Machini, those companies are really what's keeping us busy. I see probably the most quotes from an ASRS perspective. But as you know, with all of those systems comes conveyor, comes label printers, comes all the ancillary equipment. So I'm seeing, I guess, a big push for dense storage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty interesting because there's a lot of discussion too around the kind of brownfield, or how do we stay in our building longer, right? To be able to do that. And that's where some of that, I think that dense storage it comes into play, right? It's because people are like, okay, well, if I can get more out of my building, right, then I don't have to move, or I don't have to move as soon, right? So tell us a little bit about that maybe too, from like a brownfield perspective, right? Because there's a lot of conversation when it comes to automation, where some solutions, the floor needs to be perfectly level and things like that. What are you seeing in that arena? And when you do your installations in like an existing building, do you have to do anything to accommodate that maybe the floor is not perfect, or there's some other factors that, because it's an older building maybe, that come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see a lot of that on the precision ASRS installations, whether it be brownfield or greenfield.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we do a heat map analysis of the slab, but at the end of the day, we really rely on our datum and actually taking the stick out and tapping all the exact points, because when you look at a heat map, it could tell you this is the high spot.
Sure.
When I tap it with our datum, this specific spot is the high spot. And when you're dealing with 4 inches of variance across a 200,000 square foot, it's really important to understand exactly where the high spot is. But to maybe answer your question about brownfield work, it is tricky. The customer oftentimes doesn't want to shut down, right? So you have to find creative ways to plan the work. You have to find creative ways to execute the work, right? Are forklifts able to enter the area, right?
Sure.
Oftentimes you don't worry about that in the greenfield installation, but if we can't get something over, does that mean that we have to demo something in order to get in there? What does that do to the end user, and how does that impact their downtime? And ultimately, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, it all comes down to communication. You need to understand what's most important for the end user, and then it's up to us to work with the OEM or the integrator to come up with a schedule plan, whether that's multi-shift installation, a 24/7 shift installation, weekend work, third shift, right? Being creative in those ways, but all things that we offer through Wize and have been successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty interesting here. Are you seeing a lot of brownfield installations? You guys do a lot of brownfield?
Yeah, I would say quote velocity wise, probably 50-50 right now.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
Of the green fields, primarily all ASRS space. Again, to focus on densifying the storage inside the cube. Brownfield's been a lot of conveyor work. So again, making sure that we go through the proper lockout and tag out protocols where we're interfacing with that equipment just takes a little bit longer, but there's huge demand for the brownfield work. I think from COVID and maybe even 3-4 years before that, there were a ton of systems sold from everybody that are great systems. It's like buying a brand new car. You don't need to get a new car at 10 years. Everybody wants one, right? But you do the routine maintenance, and you see it with some of these customers of the big names. They've been running systems for 25 years on Hytral,
just
doing the routine PMs.
Yeah. Interesting. And Tell us a little bit about what goes into some of that support from a maintenance perspective, or maybe repairs and things. Because I think there's a lot of times where people get into automation or they install an ASRS or something and they don't necessarily know what is the long-term maintenance going to look like. So what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, Wize hasn't really dabbled in the maintenance and support side of things, really because our technicians have been consumed with just installations.
Sure, yeah.
From that perspective and just my experience, oftentimes it falls on the integrator to provide that level of support. Where we've had involvement actually is where customers have purchased maybe an existing shuttle system from one manufacturer and haven't had luck with it. Well, how do I keep the same rack structure and just put a new shuttle system in?
Yeah.
And while that is 100% on the task of an integrator, would not fall within Wize's capabilities, we do have the technical expertise to go in and basically give a qualified review of the racking system from a tolerance perspective to say, hey, this could accept a different provider if the rail width and tolerance is within this. So we're going through, because we've installed a lot of the 2-directional or 4-way shuttles in the industry, and we've got that experience to go in and say, this might have been brand A. It can accept brand B from our experience of installing this precision rack.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to hear those there and those types of things. That the fact that you're able to identify is a great thing as well. So now we're day 2 here at Modac. You've been walking the floor a little bit.
Yep.
Anything in particular that kind of caught your attention or you think looks really cool out there?
I like to see what Geek continues to do with their what I would call ancillary products to their core solutions.
Sure.
I liked the arm that is actually picking out of the goods to person tote, transported over via the robo shuttle.
Yeah.
And then they're actually order picking into a shelf that can be buffered for call out at the end of the day or whatever it might be. Maybe the truck with that zip code comes up and it's 100% automated.
Yeah.
I really think the put to store philosophy, the consolidation is going to be the next wave of how people try and lean out the operation. And the technologies like Geek and those AMR based solutions are leading that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating to see the evolution of the technology here and the different types of things that are happening within the space. It makes it pretty cool, right, to be a part of the space for sure. And as you look towards the future, right, especially from an infrastructure installation perspective, do you see anything in those kind of, because you guys are playing this role of supporting a lot of this from happening, right, and providing that framework for it to sit on or for it to function on, et cetera. Do you see that changing in any way in the next few years? Is there any kind of innovation happening from maybe like a structure perspective or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Being in a sales role prior to Wize selling systems, oftentimes you really don't have the opportunity to look at the installation set or what the component makeup might be because you're worried about schedule and ROI and getting the proposal back to the customer. Coming to what I would call the post-sale side of the business, joining Wize, there is so much difference from product provider to product provider that I think a lot of people either might not notice or pay attention to. And that's all the way down to the application of the base plate on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, you've got one masted AMR provider that does 2 bolts and shims, and you've got one masted AMR provider that does a jack bolt with a grout pack underneath. 2 very different installations, 2 very different costs to do that.
Yeah.
Ultimately providing the same results, right? So I think as we walk around here, as much as we want to see the new technologies, it's educating ourselves with the differences of these technologies so that when that partner or when a partner reaches out and says, hey, what do you think about this? We know, well, it's similar to this, but it's a different application regarding bolting to the floor, or we have to do frame build on this one. So
yeah, interesting. And interesting you said that it's 2 different approaches to fastening to the floor but getting the same result. Are there scenarios, because a lot of these robotics companies, a lot of them are like startups, right? And the founders are more like on the tech side, maybe not so much on the structural side, right? I mean, there are opportunities opportunities there sometimes that you see for some of the partners you work with where you're like, actually, we could do a different kind of installation and it would actually like bring the cost down of the solution itself?
Yeah, we're doing it two different ways. One, providing feedback to OEM partners from things we see in the field, right? One cool thing I've seen is the horizontal beams for some of these providers, they're actually lasering in the QR code rather than having to go to the physical application of the QR code. So passing that back, hey, this is what we saw. And then through the quoting process between Dalton LeClaire, who works for me, a sales engineer, and myself, we've got about 16 years in the industry selling these systems. So oftentimes we see a drawing and we just offer the, hey, have you thought about this type of thing? And it's allowed, I think, our customers to say, hey, if I did that, we could cut out like half the pallet stands that we need. Or potentially eliminate all of the rail on the ground floor of the ASRS because we'll make it a shelf-to-person field. Like, I didn't even think about that. So challenging them in that way. And I think we do it, one, out of just intrigue, right? Kind of selling the mousetrap in some regards, but also to ensure that we have a total understanding of the solution. Otherwise, the install quote is wrong, and that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super interesting too. And the lasering of the QR code, that's something I haven't heard before. That's a pretty cool idea. Yeah. Very interesting there. So really interesting to talk to you here, Will, and hear a little bit about from the installation side and how you're supporting from an infrastructure level into some of these automation solutions that we see out here on the floor and helping to make sure that they have that precision that they need to be able to optimize or operate at their full optimization there as well. So if people want to learn more about Wize or get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, WizeSolutions.com is our website. I'm a big LinkedIn guy, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. But we'll just call it inquiries, sales at WizeSolutions.com.
All right.
We pride ourselves on a 24 to 48 hour turnaround, so we'll get in touch with you as soon as we can.
All right. Fantastic. So we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes. So Will, thank you so much for coming by our booth and talking to us here at Modex.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your time.
Great to see you.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.